Great, we're ready to get started. So good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Arango. I am with Framework, and we've been working with the city and the community on developing the master plan for downtown Pasco for a little over a year now. Leslie, you want to say hi?
Yes. I'm not muted. Hi. Good evening. My name is Leslie Bain. I'm with Framework as well, and we've really enjoyed this last year plus working with the City of Pasco, and we're really pleased to talk to you about the downtown plan this evening.
Great. So the program for this evening, we're going to give a presentation similar to the presentation we gave to the City Council a couple of weeks ago. And then there's going to be opportunity for input. We're going to use the Slido tool to do some live polling. Also through Slido, you can ask questions. So we'll do some Q&A at the end. And there will be some different ways that you can ask questions through the app. We'll have opportunities for people to be able to raise their hand, and we can unmute you and you can give comments that way. The city is also going to be live streaming this event on Facebook and YouTube. So those that are not actually on the Zoom platform can also participate in the live polling and ask questions through that platform. So there will be quite a bit of opportunity for dialogue later on in the meeting. So with that, I will share my screen and we will start the presentation here. Okay, so let's get going. So this is the first page in the plan, and I think one of the things we often hear doing these projects in other communities is, a bit of skepticism. Is this plan really going to happen? Are people committed to it? Is it just a document that is going to kind of collect dust? And so we wanted to be kind of blunt in terms of the beginning of the plan and just say that this has been designed really as a plan of action. We've heard this from community members that we have interfaced as part of the project. And I think the good thing is that, having done this work in a lot of different places, we really feel like there's some good momentum building in downtown Pasco. There's a commitment from the city, from the DPDA, community organizations, downtown business and property owners. And it's really, I think, quite an exciting time to be in downtown Pasco, and we're really excited about that. So we just wanted to be clear, this is a plan of action. I think Councilmember Maloney pointed out at the City Council meeting, there's something like 30 or so near-term actions, which are things that are meant to happen within 1 or 2 years. So some of the questions we'll ask later in the meeting are around priorities for, what you may think is most needed for downtown Pasco, whether you are a resident that frequents downtown, a visitor, you own property, you operate a business. We really want to be here to support you and your dreams for downtown. So we'll ask some questions in that regard later. So again, it's a plan of action that's focused by a vision, it's guided by goals, it's achieved in strategies, but realized through actions. And the plan includes all of those elements. Plan of action makes the connections that lead toward implementing the vision Pasco citizens have for their downtown. And we'll go through some of the input that we've heard along the way. So we'll start with the plan framework, which is sort of an executive summary that appears early on in the project. It includes all of the goals, the vision, the strategies, and the actions. So if you focus on just one part of the plan, this would be the place to do it. And then before I turn it over to Leslie to talk about the vision, I think one of the things we wanted to highlight is that a downtown plan really touches a lot of the ingredients that need to be addressed to have a successful downtown. And it provides a framework for future action. Some of those actions can be capital projects, some can be further studies or further efforts that are a little bit more focused. What we're really trying to do is provide a vision and sort of a framework for decision going forward. But we want to recognize that there are some of these issues that are difficult to address in their totality at this level. So that's where the implementation piece really comes together. And a lot of these things are addressed in the plan, but there are further things that will need to be done as far as implementation on that.
So this is a plan of action, but the vision is the other side of that. And we're believers in both, because if you really want to be effective, you not only have to act, but you have to know where you want to get to. And that's the vision. So in talking to people for over a year now, these are the things that we've really sort of crystallized out of so many discussions. A lively and authentic downtown. Pasco's a really special place. It's not just anywhere. We want it to be its best self and to be a lively place that attracts people. A district showcasing its history. You have fabulous history. You have fabulous cultural richness. I love the multi-layered history of Pasco, and you've got a lot of architectural and physical things that also show that. And the other amazing asset is your connection to the river, which is so near yet so far from the downtown. It's right there. It's a huge part of your past. It's a hard part of your future, but it's hard to find from both directions. And then really the people, it's always all about the people. And we want to make a place that everybody can live and enjoy. We'd love to see more things for kids and for seniors. We'd love to see things where people feel comfortable and safe so that they can enjoy them. The idea of living there, downtowns really benefit by more people living in the downtown. And so we've taken a look at that. But these four things are really the heart of this flower that's on the screen. And as Jeff was saying, that there's a whole set of layers that stem from this vision, and it's in a very graphic form. But this is the heart of it, and this is the vision.
Thanks. So the vision is supported by four main goals, and kind of build from what Leslie just described. These are supported by the input that we got, some of the existing conditions we work, which is sort of the more technical piece that we did in the beginning of the project. Looking at things like streets and public spaces, we had a market analysis done to look at development. We looked at the zoning code. We looked at some of the city, sort of programs around certain things and community groups and things like that. So that piece is available online as well. First goal is active and safe streets and places for all. This is really kind of the heart of the public core of downtown. There's been major investments in like Peanuts Park, which was just amazing. Asset for downtown that many downtowns we work with do not have. There are current plans and thinking in progress to improve streetscapes in downtown, and we had a specific workshop on Lewis Street that we'll talk about in a little bit. There's opportunities for additional programming and activation in downtown so that it is lively, it does feel safe, and it is very welcoming. The top goal, robust and collaborative downtown management, that really deals with kind of the organizational elements of a downtown. So the partnership between the city and the DPDA are really important. Implementing things like the Main Street approach, which has been critical to the success of many downtowns. It's how you promote yourself, it's how you design your community, it's how you attract and retain businesses. And it's how you organize yourself and fund yourself. So we have some strategies in that regard. A downtown that reflects Pasco's people, culture, and people history and culture. And that's really important. I think some communities have gone in the direction of sort of choosing a theme or something that's maybe a little bit less authentic. And that's maybe been successful for them as an economic strategy. But our recommendation would be not to do that in Pasco. It's not necessary. I think the uniqueness and the richness of the community are really what makes it special, and we should continue to build on that. The last goal, which is really important as well, is sort of the partnership from the private sector. So the property owners, the business owners, and we've gotten to interface with many of them. And they have exciting ideas and plans that have been and are continuing to be thought through. But we've heard things like there's buildings that are in disarray that need to be rehabbed. So we have some concepts in there. We have some strategies about how there could be public and private partnerships to get further investment in downtown. We know from the market study that new development is tenuous from a financial feasibility standpoint. So we have some strategies in the plan that can help to close that gap. You have this great tool in the PDA, the Public Development Authority, that many downtowns do not have. And Leslie will talk a little bit later about what some of those opportunities are in terms of getting involved in development and partnering with the private sector. So we feel like a lot of the pieces are in place. They just need some fine tuning in order to get everyone moving in the right direction. We'll go through, these are now the strategies layer is added now, and these are not necessarily all of them, but it's a highlights. And we'll go through these, many of these in more detail, so I won't belabor it, but each of the goals has, again, very specific strategies and actions that are at the end of the plan and summarized in terms of timeline, the resources in terms of funding or staff time that is needed to implement them. And it's sort of a roadmap for the future. And then there's also a section on monitoring the success of the plan. So every year there could be a simple report issued, here's what's been achieved, here's what's left to do, any challenges or obstacles that may be facing, or any new issues that may have come up. So again, we're trying to create accountability across the board for implementing the plan and realizing the community's vision for downtown. So this is what we're calling the framework diagram for the plan, and it highlights, I think, some of the key strategies and actions from the plan. So starting at the bottom of the map, I think, one of the important things is magnifying downtown Pasco's sort of sense in the region, right? Doing some outreach at the farmers market, and getting to know people in the community. I think there's a sense that people might come for the farmers market, but really they may not know all that there is to offer in downtown Pasco. So how do we magnify the presence in the region and even beyond? We attended a business advisory council meeting earlier, and it was great to hear that they had some statistics on who had attended a recent really successful event in the alley. And it was sort of a mix of folks from the Tri-Cities, about a third from Pasco, but also many people from the Seattle area. So I think there is an opportunity to cast a wider net. And then looking into the middle diagram, this is the proposed new boundary, formal planning boundary for downtown. It's been extended up to the north to kind of capture some of the older historic fabric and provides kind of a gateway into downtown from the north. The areas highlighted in red are areas where we're proposing various streetscape improvements, a Parklet program to help businesses in areas where sidewalk widths are insufficient, looking at routing for trucks, kind of at the edges of downtown, and then having kind of a focus really on the core of downtown and the heart of downtown and how we can really make that even more awesome, for lack of a better term, and how we can magnify that throughout the rest of downtown. And then as you get into the core, we get more specific. We have concepts for specific streets and public spaces, how we can magnify the fabulous improvements of Peanuts Park and pull that up to the north, really focusing Lewis Street as kind of the vibrant main street in downtown with a strong emphasis on pedestrian improvements and walkability, and then some related bike improvements on some of the other streets in downtown that we think can be done without necessarily having to look at major capital investments. So we'll go through these in more detail, but these are, again, highlighting some of the major strategies and actions of the plan. And I won't go through all of the details here, but this is now adding the layers of the action. So this is sort of how we kind of builded the plan, starting with the vision and then kind of moving down through. So if you go to the framework section of the plan and you wanted to see the entire plan in sort of one snapshot or one page, this would be the place to do it. So it's really adds the specific things that we're going to do to be able to implement the plan. We'll preview some of these as we move through the presentation. Okay, now we're going to go through the planning process and what we heard. And as I said, we began this about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago. We got to do some outreach at the farmers market, and this was when Peanuts Park was still under construction. But we had a lot of good discussions at that time. We had some one-on-one and small group stakeholder meetings. And then that kind of initial outreach culminated in a public visioning workshop held at Salon Veracruz. In December of 2021, it was very, very well attended. There was a strong presence from both the city and the community. We had lots of information sort of from the existing conditions report and boards that we displayed. We gave a presentation. We had some Q&A, and that's all been summarized as part of the existing conditions work, so that's available. After that meeting, we ended up kind of pausing some of the work on the core of the downtown plan and working with the city to develop some scoping for a workshop on Lewis Street. And at Framework, we've done, specific designs for individual streets, and we also do downtown plans. And I think, the benefit of sort of looking at Lewis Street within the context of the downtown plan is you can consider, the function of other related streets, right? And so I think that was kind of our focus, again, dealing with it at kind of a conceptual level, but also being able to hear from the public as well. So we had a workshop. We had some great local food that was there. And we rolled up our sleeves and did some design kind of mapping exercises. And those were really fun. We had pictures that people cut out, and you can see this information online, and that was shared and summarized in terms of what people would like to see on Lewis Street. So we'll present that in a little bit later. There was some outreach at Cinco de Mayo. That was done as well. We've had various stakeholder meetings along the way, property and business owners and others that have contacted us and would like to give us input. And then here we are right now. We're having an open house kind of meeting tonight. We're planning to next come to Pasco and have an in-person meeting kind of focused on the business and property owners and development community. I think anyone would be welcome to attend, but that's just kind of the focus. And then we'll be collecting any feedback on the draft plan, revising that, and then the hopes is that it will be adopted towards the end of the year, if not sooner. So this is just a collage of some of the folks that attended the visioning workshop. You may see yourself in the photo there, but it was really quite a lot of fun. And some of what we heard, probably obvious to a lot of you. People want more things to do downtown. They want things like a coffee shop, more restaurants, bookstores, gyms, places to hang out, often called third places. They just want more diversity in uses while recognizing there's a lot of great businesses already in downtown. People would like activation. Coming to downtown on a farmer's market day is a real eye opener. There's people everywhere. It's active. It really feels vibrant. How can we bring some of that, maybe not on the same scale, but how can we bring that kind of energy to Pasco on a daily basis? And people want improvements to streetscapes. In many cases, there's an ample amount of public space, reasonably wide sidewalks and things like that. But how do we add lighting and street trees and benches and opportunities for businesses to spill over, things like that? People really want a safe and vibrant downtown. We heard a lot about, issues and concerns around public safety and cleanliness and things like that. So, that's got to be at the forefront of everything we do. Always in every downtown, there's always a concern around parking, but we have some strategies around that. I think we really need to continue to collect data and information. I've done parking studies around the country, and it's really important to collect information and make sort of data-driven decisions. And the city did invest in some parking data that was collected recently that we can build off of, and we have some strategies on how to manage parking. Homelessness, obviously a concern from a variety of perspectives. We do have some strategies that I think get to some of the issues related to that, but having worked in a number of downtowns, including Spokane, at the broad sense, it's an issue that I think is broader than downtown. It includes the whole city of Pasco to some degree, and also the region. So that's just an issue that certainly we've touched on, but there's more work to do. Updating the code and zoning. Again, how can we close the gap on sort of the economic feasibility of development in downtown? Things like parking standards can often be a barrier. There's a number of zoning districts that are in downtown that are also used in other areas that are much more different from a context standpoint. And so one of the key strategies is to update zoning and development standards so that we can really make sure it works and helps to close the gap on feasibility and really drives more investment in downtown. And we'll have a process for doing that and opportunities for input along the way. But we really want to support property owners and businesses through that process. And then lastly, which is key to every downtown and what, really drives people to your downtown is support for small businesses. And there's a lot of great ones already in downtown, people we've been able to meet with. And I think, can we start to bring in some of the other uses that the community would like through some various strategies, which I think we can. Lewis Street Workshop, again, kind of a cool collage there. You can see people working on the mapping exercise. And what we heard was safety is fundamental to the future success of Lewis Street, kind of what, building off of what I had just described. More diversity of uses, desire for truck traffic to be routed away from Lewis Street to the extent, possible. Understanding that, it's sort of up to the individual driver to be able to do that. Variety of streetscape elements are desired. So lighting, seating, landscaping, public art. People would like to see murals, more trees, opportunities for businesses to use the right of way. Lewis Street enhancement should support property investment along the corridor. So, oftentimes one of the primary reasons that you invest in streetscapes is you're trying to get a response from the adjacent property owners. Does it make it more attractive for them to operate a business because of the streetscape improvements? Are there businesses or buildings, I should say, along the corridor that need investment, like the old theater building? Could the streetscape project be a catalyst for something to happen there and elsewhere? And then lastly, I think access for mobility for bikes is important for downtown. And I think we have some strategies again that look at the whole network of streets in downtown and the opportunities to do that. And I think that is an important kind of piece for the success of downtowns, making it safe for people to access it in different ways. And then this is just quickly a composite map. This is available online, but it would be interesting, in a few years, say, to do this exercise again and see how the colors change. But we ask people to just mark up what they see as assets, which is blue. So you can see lots of assets. Red is challenges and things to improve. So it could be, a parking lot that, could maybe be redeveloped. It could be a building that, is in need of investment, things like that. So it's sort of a heat map kind of for us as we were putting the plan together. And, some of these challenges show up in some of the concept plans. Like this building is shown in red, perhaps because it's currently vacant. And so we did a little bit of a concept plan for how that could kind of contribute to the vision for downtown. All right, now we'll go through some of the strategies and actions. And we're going to start with active and safe streets and places for all. Real quickly, this is just that diagram again, the highlighting Lewis as kind of the main street in downtown. The other streets in yellow have various proposals for streetscape improvements and bike facilities, which we'll go through in a moment. So let's get to it. So this is Lewis Street. And as many of you know, there's been a process to kind of look at Lewis Street that predated the master plan, and there are some various alternatives. We do a lot of Main Street work. We've done projects that have been built in various communities, mostly within the state. And I would say from our experience, you really want to support the business activity. You want to support access to downtown through properly provided and managed parking. And you want to promote a fantastic pedestrian experience. And so that's kind of the emphasis here. What we proposed as a concept would be widening the sidewalks to about 20 feet in width. That would allow businesses to use the right of way without having to take up parking through a Parklet program, which we are proposing in some other areas. Ample space for trees and lighting, both kind of traditional pedestrian lighting and more kind of artistic lighting across the street. There's an opportunity for mid-block crossings if that's desired as we get more into the final design. And I would say, just from our experience, having done a lot of Main Street projects, it is fairly common not to include dedicated, bike facilities on those projects. If you look at main streets, around the state, because of the space that it takes up, you often do not see that. There are examples of it. It's all about trade-offs. There's pros and cons, but we looked at some of the other streets as well and opportunities to provide bike facilities as well, which we'll go over in a few moments. So again, Lewis is sort of all about kind of the Main Street pedestrian business activity experience, again, with opportunities of parking. And we are showing sharrows. And because this has been designed to be kind of a slow type Main Street, there is opportunities for short distances for bikes to be able to share the travel lane with the use of sharrows. So moving up one block north to Clark, one of the things that we did for all of these streets was looking at the existing cross sections. And this is true on all of the streets where the width of the travel lanes is wider than is what is needed. So typically in a downtown, your travel lane would be about 10 to 11 feet wide. In the case of Lewis Street, it's about 17 feet wide. On Clark and Columbia, it's more like 14 feet wide. And what that does is it can induce higher traffic speeds. It can make it less safe, and it can increase the likelihood of vehicle, pedestrian, and or bike collisions. And so one of the things that we work on in a lot of downtown is what we call right sizing streets. It's sort of getting all of the elements to work together. And in some cases, if you have oversized travel lanes, through just simply restriping the street, you can add other amenities. And so in the case of Clark, we think that at least initially through some rechannelization, there's the opportunity to add a two-way kind of all ages bike facility that kids and seniors and really anyone would feel comfortable biking because it's buffered by this landscaping. It is buffered by this row of vehicles as well. This is kind of showing the block that is just to the east of, to the west of 4th. And so this concept does show changing one lane of parking from angled parking to parallel parking to make this work. But as you move to the west, Clark becomes a 4-lane street, and the 4 lanes are well in excess of the needed capacity for the anticipated and current amount of vehicle traffic. And so what we're proposing there is to narrow that down to 2 lanes and add some angled parking. And so by being able to do that, we're essentially parking neutral, and we can keep all of the parking. We can slow down traffic so it works better with the pedestrian environment, and we can add this all ages bike facility. And we think a lot of this could, again, be done through restriping and sort of more temporary improvements. And then maybe long-term, there's ways to sort of integrate the bike facility in a more meaningful way. The other thing that we're proposing, you can see here, are streetscape enhancements. And so these could be done perhaps block by block. The sidewalks, I think, are already 12 to 14 feet wide here. And the land use along Clark really, really varies. There's sections to the west that are really residential. There's this block here that's sort of more urban and kind of more like Lewis Street. As you go to the east, it's a little bit more of a mix. There's some commercial properties, but not necessarily retail. So there's an opportunity, I think, to kind of tailor the streetscape improvements to what the uses are. And in this case, you know, some of the streetscape improvements like are shown on Lewis are probably appropriate. So lighting and banners and seating and things like that. There's a fantastic kind of block of nice retail there. So it's the approach here is, I think, going to vary a little bit more than would happen on Lewis Street, where it's a little bit more consistent. And then Columbia, again, has similar sort of issues with the wide travel lanes of about 14 feet. The land use on this street is sort of more commercial, but less retail. And I think there is opportunity to have more active uses over time. But at this current time, you know, there's some vacancies. There's some more kind of more industrial type uses. And there would be an opportunity to add a one-way bike lane that would be buffered. And this bike lane is sort of important for those that may be coming over the cable bridge, and it provides a nice gateway into downtown. And we think this could be provided, again, through rechannelization. There is more sort of engineering that would need to be done to determine the configuration of parking. There would be the opportunity, again, to convert some angled parking to parallel parking, if that makes sense from an engineering standpoint. But this would provide a nice, safe entry point into the city from the south, into downtown from the south, along Columbia, and wouldn't require someone to necessarily go the extra 2 blocks up to the other facility on Clark. So there's some options here, but then again, I think on the streetscape improvements, let's say that there was an investment in one of the vacant buildings and they wanted to put in an active storefront. There could potentially be either a requirement for frontage improvements with a standard set of you know, furniture and lighting, or it could be done, you know, block by block as a city-led project, kind of tying into private sector development. So again, kind of a flexible format. Whereas I think in Lewis Street, in order to really make that whole project work as we've conceptualized it, it would be more of a major kind of capital project. And then this concept is the block right next to Peanuts Park on 4th between Lewis and Columbia. And we're proposing what's called a festival street there. I think when the farmers market was there, while the park was being redeveloped, was sort of an opportunity to kind of test that. But a festival street is something that's essentially designed to kind of work like a plaza, but is also very flexible. So, you know, on a Tuesday where you want people to be able to come down and drive and go into the bakery, you can do that. It sort of functions like a regular street, but it's sort of designed to be kind of a slow, more kind of shared street. And you can have more kind of artistic elements like the pattern that we're showing here. And then on days, this would also allow us to expand the sidewalk on this side of the street where there's active retail and the community kitchen. And it would have, again, similar streetscape elements. So this would allow like outdoor seating and things on a regular basis. And then on a festival day, it can basically be an extension of Peanuts Park, can be programmed in different ways. It's really pretty easy to close it once you have kind of the basic layout figured out. It could be used for concerts, it could be used for food trucks, other events. I understand there's a symphony event, you know, coming up. You could put the symphony out there. Really, the sky's the limit, I think, in terms of what the opportunities are there. Leslie?
Okay, I just want to say that the symphony event happened and they had 800 some people. And if you want to get 1,000 people in there, there's more space to do that. I play the oboe, so I'm a big symphony fan. So this is a really interesting diagram to me. Looking at the bones, really, of the downtown, the street, the layout. And again, it kind of shows those layers of history. So Pasco is a river town, and there are roads that follow the river. Pasco is a railroad town, and the streets of the downtown follow the line of the railroad. It's also a western town that was platted the same way that so many were with the north-south grid, and you can see that. So there's this wonderful, when you're looking at the map, layering system that's very rich. On the other hand, if you're driving around, it's really confusing. So one of the things that we want to do is help people find your fabulous downtown. So for instance, when you're coming across the bridge from Kennewick, that's a beautiful bridge, and then it kind of dumps you on 10th, which is not so beautiful. The other thing is that there are various modes. There's trucks, there's bikes, there's cars, deliveries, etc. We want to make sure that different kinds of vehicles can find their best way around. We would love to take the trucks out before they get downtown and get them on the other side of the tracks if that's where they're going, so that we don't drag them down Lewis Street. We would love to take the bikes along a street like Columbia, because there's a lot of room, as Jeff showed, to make that a very spacious and safe bike route. And then have some really wonderful, iconic wayfinding that says, this is Lewis Street, downtown is that way, and you want to go there. So wayfinding is something that people have been, I think, talking about in Pasco for a long time. My particular take on wayfinding is signs are fine, but I want to have something iconic that's intriguing, that maybe it's a pieces of trucks that can tell the trucks to go that way, that there's a fabulous bicycle structure, that the bikes know that they go that way, and that there is something at 10th and Lewis that really represents the richness of downtown in an artistic and appealing way that makes you want to turn on that not very humane street into a very humane and culturally rich district. Okay. So streets are public spaces, and this is not a totally new idea, but it's relatively new. That for so long, it was just the engineers that figured out how fast they could move cars through our streets. And really, we want downtown especially to be a place you don't just try to blast through as quickly as possible, but a place that you want to stay. So you can get there for sure. You can find a place to park, but you actually want to hang out there. So one of our recommendations is to create a downtown parklet program. And, this is not a very expensive program. It's not zero, but it really takes some of the space in the right of way, which you have, and offers it up to businesses and activities to really make a place where you can enjoy being out, where you can watch people and enjoy the out of doors, especially when the weather's good. So this is something that many, many places have done. There are ways of helping out with some funding, and you really get a lot of bang for your buck because if it's a pleasant place to stay, people will stay there, especially if there's something to do, food to eat. People can sell you that food. It's a good thing. A lot of successes. Okay, next. The other thing is, and this is a problem not just in Pasco, but sadly a problem everywhere, that safety has really risen to the top of the stack in many discussions about downtowns and neighborhoods. And it's a big problem that is upstream from a lot of things that we have influence over. But lighting is something that we can do that can do a lot of work. So this picture kind of indicates there's light glowing from the storefronts. There are pedestrian scale lights that shine on the sidewalk rather than just the intersection. And then there's a layer of lighting that makes it fun. The Twinkle Lights again, and I know you got them in the alley. I'm really excited about that. They change what a place feels like. And again, you get a lot of impact for the money that you spend doing that. It would be especially great just to have that where downtown starts. So again, it's a wayfinding thing. It's like somebody's home. This is fun. There's stuff going on here. It's safe. You want to be here. There's people. So the lighting is something we think is a near-term action and an ongoing action that can make a big difference in how downtown feels and the message that it sends to visitors. So public space, wow, it is all about public space. That's where we share being together. And it's not that there aren't issues, especially these days, but good for you, Pasco. You're doing it. You've redone Peanuts Park. It's fantastic. You've got a river to connect to. You've got streets that can be more active. You've got a district where there's a lot of history, and we've kind of extended the idea of downtown to the north to take in your Carnegie Library History Museum and the county courthouse. There's beautiful stuff that you have. It requires activation and love. One of the things that I like to tell people to think about is there's activation that requires, the DPDA staff, the city staff to be out there making stuff happen. And that's great. But you also want your business community to have the opportunity to help make a living by activating the public spaces. So sometimes we can prime the pump with staff and get these things to really start being thought of differently, being used differently, being loved. So we're looking at a lot of things that can really help your streets and public spaces be places where the people that live there enjoy, and people can come and visit and spend time in your downtown.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie. Now we are going to move on to robust and collaborative downtown management. And that was the longest section of the goals. So these next ones will go a little bit quicker. So downtown management, it sounds kind of wonky and maybe a little bit obtuse, but it really is the foundation of every program. You can build things in downtown, you can get new businesses, but really you have to consistently manage your downtown. You have to work together, and the work to some degree is never done. So some of the strategies we have, again, I mentioned earlier, establishing a formal downtown boundary, which is in process. Enhance the roles of downtown and Main Street organizations. So again, Pasco is fortunate not only to have a Main Street organization, but also a PDA, which has some additional horsepower in terms of opportunities for attracting financing and managing facilities and real estate development. Establish and maintain an active parking management program. As I had said earlier, everyone has a perception and opinion about parking, but it's really important to have the data If you have a parking problem and you routinely collect data, it will show up in the data. I can promise you that. So it doesn't need to be super expensive. There's community sort of driven ways to collect data. We can provide the sort of blueprint to do that and some basic parking strategies so it works for everyone. So there's a right place for employees to park that's safe and convenient. Your visitors are attracted to the right places, things like that. You don't want to be out writing lots of tickets and things like that, and generally don't need to, but I think there's some simple things we can do to maximize the value of the parking that we have. The downtown organization can be responsible for doing marketing programs that are really specific to downtown. You know, why would a new business want to come there? Why would you want to come as a visitor? And you know, it's great to participate in regional efforts, but it's also good to have programs that are really specific to downtown Pasco and what it offers. And there's some great examples of downtown organizations that have been successful do that. And then the last one, which is something that Pasco's already fantastic at, is holding events in downtown. I think there's opportunities to continue to grow and add more richness to the different experiences in downtown. And so, you know, a simple, I think, action is to just develop a more robust downtown events plan. And it, you know, doesn't need to be that all events are, you know, enormous with thousands of people. It can be a small, nice, intimate event in the alley like just happened, or, you know, something on the festival street. So this piece is really important. And I think there's already some great collaboration with the DPDA and the city and other groups that we can build from. All right, moving on, we're going to now talk about substantial private sector development and investment. So one of the things we need to do is update land use and zoning. We need to look at things like parking requirements and development standards. And a lot of it is to fit development into the existing context and fabric that's already there. We want to bring more housing downtown. We found that, you know, some of the most successful downtowns and neighborhoods, particularly those that have come out of COVID well, are those where people live and are invested in downtown. So we have some strategies and some concept plans that Leslie put together that look at how we can bring more housing to downtown. We want to pursue catalyst projects and consider public-private partnerships. So we've identified some specific locations like the theater on Lewis and the building across from Peanuts Park on 4th, where, as well as the building to the south of Peanuts Park on Columbia. That would be relatively, you know, simple rehab projects, but could provide, you know, some of the desired uses that the community is looking for, like coffee shops and more restaurants and things like that. And so we have some concept plans in there, and we think there's opportunities for the public and private sector to work collaboratively towards that. And then we've identified some opportunity sites. Those are sites that are, you know, kind of underdeveloped, either parking lots or, you know, buildings that are in need of an investment. And we think there's opportunities to kind of market those to developers, to do some concept plans and some graphics that could show what the possibilities are from a physical standpoint and how to comply with any updated zoning and development codes. So again, these are really relatively easy things that could be done that I think could have a significant positive impact. And now, lastly, Leslie is going to talk about a downtown that reflects Pasco's history, people, and culture.
Yeah, oh, I love this stuff. I mean, it's all about people, and people is culture. And, you know, we love talking about zoning codes and stuff like that, but really it's all about how do you support people and who they are and what they can do together. So Pasco's got a ton of really amazing culture. And, you know, some of the things that we've heard is, you know, we really want to do more murals. We want to be able to use more than a quarter of the wall. There's some regulations that have been holding us back. We're hoping that we can do some work with your Arts Commission and help take some of these many possibilities and get a plan going that we can start doing some of these and just get going on them. Things like murals are not that hard, really. In the one hand, if you don't have any barriers, you just need a bucket of paint and hopefully a good artist. So there's things that I think we can do in the near term, and success will breed success. You are doing such a good job with festivals and showcasing your culture. We want to have that happen not just once a year or 3 times a year, but be something that you have the physical infrastructure to do as often as people want to do it. That Peanuts Park, for instance, is got something going on a Tuesday morning, not just a great day one day in the summer. So we've looked at a lot of different ideas for that. We're really excited about some of them. And we feel like there is so much opportunity in Pasco if people can all work together that we're just really excited about what you have in terms of culture and history. Again, we did suggest that the boundaries really incorporate not only the historic buildings downtown, but some of your historic jewels just up to the north on 3rd and 4th, including Volunteer Park and your historic buildings. So really pumping up your history. People come on tour buses to come see your history. So let's let's do more.
Okay, last section of the presentation, and then we'll move into the live polling and address questions and comments. So as we began the presentation, this is a plan of action. And so the last section of the plan deals with implementation. This does not include, these are just kind of a snapshot of the tables that are in there, but it goes action by action. And those are nested with the goals and strategies. It talks about who's responsible for kind of leading that effort, the timeline, which is near term, midterm, and long term, and those are described here on the right. And then a rough, very rough planning level cost estimates. Is this something that's $50,000 or less? Are we talking more than 500,000? What's the sort of level of effort? And there's a lot of near-term actions. There's a lot of things that can happen next year or as soon as the plan is adopted. So I think that's really exciting. There's some other things that will take longer to develop and will be more costly. And I think it's good that we have a real mix of different actions in the plan. And then the last piece in the implementation is something that we've often called like measures of success. Is just kind of indicators, right? So we kind of know what the community would like to see. They'd like to see new businesses and more variety in businesses. They'd like to see streetscape improvements. So let's kind of track that as we go forward. How many new businesses have we brought in? How much private sector investment has happened in downtown? How much public sector investments happened in downtown? Have we added new lighting? Have we added parklets? Things like that are pretty simple things to track, but I think it's interesting to sort of communicate that to the public on an annual basis and, make any refinements that we would need to make to the plan as we move forward. So that's kind of the last piece of the plan. So that is the end of the presentation. I really appreciate everyone sitting through that. There is a webpage on the city's website that has more information in the draft plan. You have my contact information there as well as Jacob Gonzalez. We do have some representatives from the city with us tonight, Jacob Gonzalez and Mike Gonzalez. I also failed to mention that we do have an interpreter. So those that would like to ask questions in Spanish, we can accommodate that. And with that, we will go to the live polling, and then we will take some questions and comments. So let me just switch over here and switch my screen. Okay, so for those of you that maybe joined late or didn't have a chance, we'll take just a brief minute or two to allow people to join. You can go on your phone, just type in slido.com or a website, and then just type in that code 2062088, or you can just use the QR code. And once you're in there, we'll start some live polls and you'll be able to respond, and then we'll all be able to see the answers as people input. And most of the questions are really targeted around priorities. So for each goal, there's a priority question for the goals, and then for each of the goals, there's a priority question about the strategy. So if you were going to rank them 1 through whatever, what would be your top priority from your perspective. And so this might help us kind of fine tune the implementation program in terms of what we focus on in the near term, or what is the highest priority. All right. So with that, and we can leave the poll open for a little while, but I'm going to start poll 1. So this looks at the goals for the master plan, which we presented, and there's a picture of the diagram there. And I know it's kind of hard to compare these, but based on your experience and understanding of downtown, is there some goals that resonated more than others in terms of what the priorities should be? I mean, I think they're all going to be priorities to some degree, but this question asks you to rank them 1 through 4 from highest to lowest priority, and then we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive in the next couple of questions. So. And I will scroll up so we can see if I can go full screen here. And that worked. And for those of you that may be watching on the live stream, you can participate as well. Okay, we've had 16 responses, and it looks like the ranking was, well, you can see, but active and safe streets and places for all was number 1. We'll provide also a summary that will be posted on the website. And if you're still inputting it, please do so. Downtown that reflects Pasco's history, people, and culture, substantial private sector investment, and then robust and collaborative downtown management. Okay. We are going to move on to the next poll. Okay, so now we're getting into the strategies that are under each goal. So this is asking you to rank the strategies from the master plan specifically related to active and safe streets and places for all. So please rank these 5. They include developing a programming plan, right sizing and enhancing downtown streets. So that's the one that includes all the street concepts that we provided, like the Lewis Street and Columbia and Clark and 4th. Improve lighting and safety. So those are the examples that Leslie showed with the diagram from Lewis Street. And then improving wayfinding as well. Okay, this one was very close. The Parklet program and lighting and safety were, well, now it's changed, so I'll wait a second. But it's very close. These ones all seem like they scored very, very high, depending on the respondent. Okay, looks like we are finished with that one. So number one, improving lighting, right sizing and enhancing streets, the Parklet programming, wayfinding, and then the programming plan. But they all seem to be fairly ranked high. So we'll go to the next one. So this one is asking specifically about the street concept plans. If you had to choose or rank, I should say, the street concept plans in terms of what you think is the most impactful for downtown, please rank these. So Lewis Street, the 4th Avenue Festival Street, which is across from Peanuts Park, the Columbia Street, which is really focused on the all ages bike facility, Columbia Street, sort of rechannelization that includes the one protected bike lane, and then something we didn't really present as concept for, but that we would be curious in your thoughts on would be an improved connection to the river along 4th. Okay, looks like we're done filling that one out. This one, if I had to guess beforehand, is probably pretty close to what I would have guessed. It looked like Lewis Street and the Festival Street were pretty close to the top two. The improved connection to the Columbia River, the Columbia bike improvements. God, sorry. I think I wrote this. This was supposed to be Clark, so that's my mistake there. We did not get that question in there, so apologies. But thank you for your input on that. We'll go to the next one. Okay, so now we're into the strategies about private sector development investment. So please rank these following strategies: updating land use and zoning to be helpful to downtown. Number two is manage and update building development and street use codes to support an active downtown. So that includes looking at kind of some potential streamline of permitting and maybe even some incentives for downtown projects. Also revisiting some of the code interpretations to make sure that they're in alignment with the goals and the vision for downtown. Okay. So top two are related to the zoning and development standards. Number 3, pursuing catalyst sites. 4, more housing downtown. And 5, facilitate development of opportunity sites. So thank you for that. We'll move on to the next one. This one is on the strategies related to downtown management. So please rank the following 4 strategies. Enhance the roles of DPDA and the Main Street organization, which currently are one organization. Establish and maintain an active parking management program, which includes collecting data, providing specific parking for employees, things like that. Actively maintain existing businesses and market and recruit new businesses that are desired by the community. So that's a little bit different than the marketing effort that's kind of tied more to visitors and sort of promoting downtown in the broader context. And then the last one is more events downtown, which is fairly straightforward. Okay, looks like there's maybe one more response we're waiting on. Okay, 20. So the actively maintain businesses and recruiting new businesses, enhancing the roles of the 2 organizations, more events downtown, and then parking came in last. Okay, 2 more questions. You guys are doing great. Last one deals with the strategies around Pasco's history, people, culture, and landscape. So the first is marketing and community strategy for locals and visitors. Should say communication strategy. Establish a public mural and a public art program. And then integrate sustainability and resiliency. So this is things like green infrastructure, maybe that becomes part of a downtown project. Having policies that maintain public buildings in downtown, which is part of the history, but also is a major driver to bring activity in downtown. Those sorts of things.
I just want to say that I'm the kind of person who really hates to make these choices that, priorities are great, but I want it all. So nothing's getting voted off the island.
Yeah, I agree. I will say that the live polling does never really get old. Watching the input change, it's very fun. Okay, a couple more. 20. Okay. So it was pretty close. And when we do the summary, it'll have the raw numbers, but the art program, number 1, marketing, number 2, and last, the sustainability and resiliency. And I'm very sorry to have to do this to you, but I have corrected the street improvement question while you were answering the others. And if you wouldn't mind, I would really appreciate it if you could respond to that one again, now that we have the right name in there for Clark Street. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate you responding again. Results are pretty much the same, except Clark Street did come in number 3 now that we have the question drafted the right way. So thank you very much. That is the end of the live polling. So I'm gonna stop this. And I am going to stop the share. There was a question as to whether we would translate the entire presentation, which we were not able to do. But if there's enough interest, we'd be happy to schedule another one and be able to do that. So feel free to contact us through the contact information that was on the presentation or through the city, and we'd be happy to set up a separate meeting. So that is the conclusion. We did schedule this for an hour. We're 10 minutes over. But I want to be respectful for those that may have had questions. So I'd like to give the opportunity first to anyone that's on the webinar. If they have a question, would like to raise their hand, we can give you the floor. So we'll see if there's any questions, and then if not, we can reconvene in the future.
Buenas tardes. ¿Alguien que guste plantear una pregunta? Yo aquí estoy para proveer servicios de interpretación. Si alguien gusta hacer una pregunta. Gracias.
Thank you, Hugo. Okay, Mr. Carl Holder, I'm going to give you the floor, and you may go ahead, sir.
I'm concerned that we're not talking about the overpass.
What would you like to discuss about the overpass?
There's a lot of traffic coming this way from the overpass.
Yeah, well, I think let's talk about it. So I think one thing is, as Leslie kind of showed in the wayfinding program, trying to encourage trucks to use the other streets in downtown. I think the other important piece is that, looking at some of the street concept plans and designing it for sort of slower traffic and making it a bit of a disincentive to use it as a cut through, I think are some of the best strategies that we've seen used in some of the other communities that we've worked with. But if you have other input and suggestions, we'd be happy to take that in. And Leslie, feel free to add any thoughts you may have.
Sure, I agree with you. And one of the things that we heard in the Lewis Street workshop was that people were concerned that trucks are going to be coming off of that overpass. So I think one of the things that is our hope as Lewis Street changes are considered to make it a more pedestrian-friendly, safe, and downtown-oriented street, that there are measures for traffic calming to discourage trucks from taking that in the first place. They can take it, but we maybe don't want that to be the first option of choice. And we want to make sure that the people coming down that overpass are going to be going slowly, and to design the street to encourage that reduction in speed. So agree with your concern.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Holder. Mr. Bill Barlow, I'm going to give you the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? I unmute.
Yes.
Just the lack of museums in general. I know we have the Historic Museum, but there's so much to show. And you talk about housing, but I think the idea of putting a museum in downtown, even a small art museum, a modern art, Hispanic art would be great. And the other thing is the railroad presence and that whole yard all underneath the Lewis Street overpass in that section. Where's the railroad museum that goes with it? That hump yard is nationally famous. You can imagine what has come through there. And a railroad museum, you could actually get cars in, you could get engines in pretty easily to show. It would be wonderful.
I would say a few words to that. I really have fallen in love with Pasco's history. Spent quite a bit of time at the museum and reading the books that I bought there about the layers of people that have come to Pasco. I think it would be fabulous. And I think that kinds of things takes some energy and resources. So there was some talk about really looking at the historic area, up by the museum. And there is an active group. And I think you really deserve support on that. It takes a while to kind of get something like a museum going, but it's certainly possible. And where people come together with some energy, you can make those things happen. And I think it would be a really good part of the history. I also think that you could put things out in the public realm that would be a little faster than getting the museum going. So, you've got the railroad presence as at the entry on the north entry to town, but to have some things that really speak to the history in artistic ways, in interpretive ways, could be some things that could be part of your art program. And I think they could be really successful and get that momentum going that maybe would help get a museum going.
Great. Thank you, Bill. And now I'm going to go to Thomas or Michelle.
Hi there, it's Thomas here. Jeff and Leslie, I want to say thank you so much for being great partners and great listeners. And as you know, I've had the fortunate ability to be at all the meetings, so I've been able to see a lot of this. And at this point, we're a lot more interested in the actual execution of things. So because we've seen the high level, a few of the things that we talked about in the presentation here were housing. I know that I've submitted suggestions in the past about allowing folks to live in existing buildings in the back as long as they don't take up retail frontage and their buildings have proper safety egress and things like that. I think that's one thing that I haven't heard back either yay or nay on. So I think very specific code changes would be interesting to me as a former code board member as well, to see, how are things going to actually change versus the high level. And then talking about changes as well. Sorry, I know this is a two-parter, but we have those budget items with $1 sign, $2 signs, and $3 signs beside them. I think it'd be really great for the implementation standpoint to give more specific budget numbers to our council so they can become better informed into, okay, we need to allocate this for next year, for the next 2 years for their biennial budget, and say, hey, this is what we need to do to execute this, because it's great to have ideas and renderings, but if we have money, that's the next thing, right? As I've found out, unfortunately, as a property owner, that's the most important part. Can you pay for it?
Yeah, so we agree with you. So we are actually working on what you just described, which is working with the city on sort of a near-term implementation plan that will have more detailed costs associated with it. And I think part of that is wanting to hear from the community at meetings like this and at others around what they see as the most important pieces of that. So I completely agree. And then I think on the code implementation stuff, there will be some additional outreach, particularly to business and property owners, but others. And I think the idea you brought up is a good example of some creative thinking that we would want to integrate into that process. And the updating of the code and zoning, which seem to be favorable in the polling responses, will, I think, most likely be a near-term priority and something that we're going to be costing out with the city. So appreciate it, Thomas, and I agree with your comments. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you're doing in the downtown. And it's a little bit of a conundrum because some things you don't know how much they're going to cost until you really fine pencil it a little bit more. So, maybe we can get some ranges in there as well that will get a budget line item going while we, figure out exactly what lighting would look like, right? Because there's a lot of ways of doing that. So, trying to walk everything forward in a good way and as fast as possible.
And sorry, just one more follow-up, Leslie, because you brought
that
up. Lighting is a great example. We have those funds available from ARPA or the city has at least talked about that. there are some opportunities for real quick wins. And I think that it would be great if you could help identify those quick wins and integrate with the city and say, hey, you know what? These ones can be easy. Find the staff, get these done.
Yeah.
As we saw with that Ari's in the Alley event, people will come, people enjoy it, and it makes a heck of a difference. So thank you both for your support on that event as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice job on the event. Okay. Miss LaWanda Hatch, you have the floor.
Okay, so I am actually, this is the first meeting I'm participating in. I was invited by Michael Gonzalez, and so I'm really excited. I've lived here my entire life, and Downtown Pasco has so many potential. It's so, there's so much potential there. One question that I had, to me, approach is really important. And I look at the approach from the cable bridge, as you mentioned, it's pretty much an eyesore. I just didn't know if there's a way to someone to approach the city council about maybe getting rid of the Starlight Hotel. I know that it's been somewhat of a drug den as well, and create a nice approach. It's like opening a package to me, a present. It's not just only important what's on the inside, but as you open it up and it gets you excited, for what the final package is. And I just feel like the approach is very, very important. And I didn't know if there was any future plans in that, or a way to convince the city council to actually start there.
Well, the hard thing about a downtown plan in some degree is, you have a somewhat hard boundary. And I think we did certainly suggest some things that sort of expand outside of the boundary. But I think it kind of goes to what Leslie was talking about, the wayfinding. It's iconic elements and maybe signage, but it's also the experience and sort of what's happening along the street, the design of the street. So I certainly think it's something that we can communicate as a comment and see where it might go.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks for
you.
that. I
Yeah.
think one of the best things about this is when people do participate, those ideas, come from the input from people like you who are spending your evening with us. And even if it's outside of our particular downtown boundaries, it's a really good forum to air some of the things that you would feel like are a priority.
Yeah, I guess I look at it as a consumer, from the consumer's perspective. So
Yeah.
We agree. Thank you very much for the comment. Okay, we're going to wrap up. There was one question we didn't address, which was on the Slido question. So I'll just address that now. It was regards to the ongoing discussion about the cannabis store. And the question whether it was in our scope, it obviously wasn't in our original scope. It was something the city asked us about. We provided a separate memo. And I think our take on that is that, first, it's essentially a citywide issue to some degree because of the prohibition. So the communities that we've seen go through the process is, first, do they want to allow it in the community? And then the process of sort of looking at where the appropriate locations are. We have been working in downtown Pullman recently. They do allow them, but not in downtown, but there are a few adjacent to downtown. So I think it comes down to local decision making. I don't think we would say don't do it, or it has to be done in order to achieve the goals for downtown. There's always trade-offs, and I think we'd be interested, I think, in what more of the community had to say about it, and sort of the process for doing so. All right. So let's see, Mr. Barlow, you have one final question. You raised your hand again, and then I think we're going to convene for the evening. So let's see, I think.
We had
go
looked
ahead.
for some property. I worked for Ben Franklin Transit, and we had looked for some property right around the market because that was the perfect place to bring people to. And one of the things we ran into were quite a few contaminated sites along Columbia. And so that's a deterrent for sure for somebody who wants to get right in the heart of things. I just
Yeah.
wondered if there'd be any work done to kind of identify those and maybe build a common package around some cleanup. Because once you get some federal funds flowing in, it could be pretty good money to reopen those sites.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I've been involved in some of my prior work. There is typically like a state database that would at least identify those sites that there were known contamination or previously had like underground storage tanks. And then oftentimes, yeah, there is public money available that could be used to clean up those sites, which would then make them more viable for future development. So I think that's a great suggestion, and I will take a look and see what we can find from the database that I just referenced, and see where it goes from there. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic one. If there's larger sites, it could attract things like brownfield funding as well. And Mr. Holder, you raised your hand, so I'll give you the opportunity to ask another question or make a comment. And you should be able to unmute now.
Sorry about the unmute.
Oh, there you go. You're good.
There we go. All right. So I wanted to respond that, from the cable bridge through downtown, we have the most awesome, just awesome laid out that the railroad has all this property that is just wasteland for development. There would be the most awesome roundabout there at 10th and Columbia that would integrate the entire get through town experience. Because you don't want people coming through downtown, but it's the only way, because Oregon Street has rail traffic and the rail traffic's increasing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holder. It's a great suggestion. It's often, I think, where roundabouts can work best is sort of on the edges of downtown. Let's see, Rick White, Mr. Rick White from the city. I'm going to give you the floor.
No, I'm sorry, Jeff. I mistakenly clicked the wrong button.
Okay, no problem. Okay, I think we have answered all the questions. I just want to say how much I appreciate the attendance. It's critical to the process for us to have engagement at every step of the way. And this recording will be available online. We will summarize the live polling, and stay tuned as the process winds down towards adoption later this year. If you have any need to contact us or provide any input, our door is always open, so please reach out. Thank you, and have a great rest of your evening.